right now?
Yeah, right now it feels like Boston and Miami are the two teams at the front here. What I will say is when you're talking about trades of this magnitude, don't be surprised if a mystery team pops into the equation. The reason I say that, it's twofold. Number one, when Milwaukee traded for Damian Lillard 3 years ago, there was very little reporting about the Bucks being in the mix there. Milwaukee is good at keeping a lid on things like this. They don't leak that much. The other thing I'll say is that if you're trading for somebody as good as Giannis Antetokounmpo and as expensive as Giannis Antetokounmpo, you're probably giving up your best player, your second best player, somebody pretty high in your pecking order. So you probably want to keep it quiet in case the trade doesn't happen. You don't want guys like that knowing that they're getting shopped. So, of course, Miami and Boston are the two most frequently cited teams. I would guess it is one of those two teams, but I wouldn't rule out an Orlando. I wouldn't rule out a Minnesota. I wouldn't rule out a Brooklyn. A lot of other teams could sneak into the mix here.
All right, so we have to be aware of some sleeper teams here. But you brought up Boston, which then leads to Jalen Brown. Where are you at with that?
Yeah, I think this could go one of two ways if they do decide to trade him. One is obviously Giannis. It's pretty straightforward. They have two Supermax contracts on their books, and neither Jalen Brown or Jason Tatum right now is an MVP candidate. That's really hard to abide financially if you're trying to build any depth. So you can either improve one of those Supermax slots by turning Jalen Brown into Giannis Antetokounmpo, or you could trade Jalen Brown for a mountain of picks, a mountain of young players, depth. You could really reconfigure your team. Say, we're going to be a one-star model instead of a two-star model. Try to build out depth. Do this a little bit more like the Knicks did. I know Karl Anthony Towns is a star, but having Jalen Brunson on that cheaper contract made that team possible. So I think it would be one of those two things. I think they're exploring both avenues, and we'll see in the coming weeks if that's what they decide to do.
All right, 2 down, 2 to go in your top tier. The next is Kawhi Leonard with the Clippers, and they've had so many different versions of trying to pair him up for a championship run, which has not yet come to fruition. They've also got a top 5 pick thanks to the Pacers, of course. So how does that either complicate or help his situation in LA?
Yeah, the Clippers at the trade deadline sort of sent a message that we are going younger. They traded Ivica Zubac, got that number 5 overall pick in the deal, traded James Harden for Darius Garland, got a decade younger in that exchange. I just don't think there's any scenario in which the Clippers are a viable championship contender during Kawhi Leonard's prime, which we don't know how much longer it'll last. He's had a lot of injury issues. He's in his mid-30s. You kind of have to cash out on the asset now. Given the injury concerns, you probably are going to have to extend him this offseason. If you do keep him, send him somewhere that he can really compete for a title. Keep stacking those younger assets. You got a lot of picks for Zubac. You're starting to get control of your own picks back. This June is going to be the final pick from the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander trade, amazingly. So if I'm the Clippers, I'm looking to trade Kawhi, get younger, and sort of reorient the team around Darius Garland and that number 5 overall pick.
We also saw on that graphic right there, in addition to Kawhi Leonard, a James Harden name with the Cavs. His trade in the season to Cleveland, how does that deal with the Donovan Mitchell deal of things?
For now, it certainly seems like Donovan Mitchell is going to extend in Cleveland this offseason. But again, when you're talking about Supermax contracts, teams do tend to get a little bit queasy. Donovan Mitchell is not Nikola Jokic, right? He's not an MVP caliber player. The Cavs have said, we believe he can be the best player on a championship team. What a team says publicly and what they believe privately are not always the same thing. There's been no credible reporting so far to suggest that Cleveland might trade Donovan Mitchell. If they're at all afraid of that extension, I would look at teams like Atlanta, Houston, Brooklyn, and say maybe they would be willing to pay a haul to get him. And if they make a big enough offer, I'd at least consider it.
Let's stay with the Cavs, and now we move on to your second tier, which is only for Giannis, something you sort of hinted up at the top of the segment. Evan Mobley, if I'm a Bucks fan and this was something that was talked about, I would have loved to have 2 years ago Evan Mobley, maybe less so this just past season, but still comes with a $50 million price tag.
Yeah, I'm still an Evan Mobley believer. I think if he had his own team, you could see more offensively. I would love to see what he looks like as a full-time center. Cleveland's never really pulled the trigger on that. He's still been partnered with Jared Allen. Obviously, it was a little bit of a down year, but remember, he was second-team All-NBA in the 2024-25 season. One Defensive Player of the Year. Cleveland won 64 games. Evan Mobley is a star. He might not be a 30-points-a-game star, but he is a star nonetheless. Milwaukee looked into him at the deadline. Cleveland didn't pull the trigger then. Thus far, it does not look like Cleveland is really in the mix here. But again, when you're talking about somebody like Giannis, you try to be careful. If you put Evan Mobley on the table and don't complete the deal, then you're going to have some issues in your locker room. So I think if Cleveland were to do this, they'd probably try to move quietly.
Why would Jaden McDaniels be an interesting trade piece?
I mean, we saw in the end of that Denver series, right? He is making a leap on offense. And when you pair that with his cheap contract, only making around $25 million a year, and his elite defense, he's an all defense caliber wing. This is one of those sort of all-around players that you need to win a championship. I would look at OG Anunoby in New York and say Jaden McDaniels is one of the closest comparisons to that in the entire NBA, except he's younger and he's cheaper. So I don't know if Milwaukee specifically would want Jaden McDaniels, but if Giannis were to end up in Minnesota, maybe the Bucks could shop Jaden McDaniels around the league to other teams that are a bit closer and could use more of those role player skills and say, can we get 3-4 first-round picks? Can we make a Mikal Bridges-esque trade with Jaden McDaniels in a Giannis blockbuster?
You said you were still an Evan Mobley guy. Are you still, or if you ever were, a Paolo Banchero guy?
It's funny, every April I find myself believing again, and then we get back to October, and I'm like, what was I seeing? He's a clear playoff riser, right? I don't know how much of that is three-point shooting. I don't know how much of that is isolation scoring being more valuable in the postseason, but every playoffs arrive, and he just really outperforms his regular season. I don't know if I'm a big Paolo Banchero believer, but if you were Milwaukee and he was on the table, it'd be hard to do much better than that, right? You're turning a 31-year-old star into a star in his early 20s. I know he's expensive. He starts a max contract next season, but that's about as good as you can get. That's somebody that you can try to build a foundation around. The question here is going to be, is Orlando ready to break up that Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner partnership? They just hired Sean Sweeney as their head coach. Where did Sean Sweeney really take off as an assistant? In Milwaukee, working with Giannis Antetokounmpo on Jason Kidd's staff. So they're certainly a team to watch here.
Let's enter your third tier, which is who wants to roll the dice. And you're talking about a former NBA champion in Anthony Davis. With Trae Young is what the Wizards were making during the season. Then they win the lottery and they have the top overall pick. What about the Brow?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I think the Wizards traded for Anthony Davis and Trae Young, not knowing what their lottery fate would be and thinking, we have to take a step forward next year. Let's get these former All-Stars in the building. Now that they got that number one overall pick, they can kind of hit the brakes if they want. And Anthony Davis hasn't sounded incredibly enthusiastic about playing in Washington. There have been some rumors over the last day or so that maybe Trae Young is available in the trade. Miami, if he could look at him as a backup if they don't get Giannis Antetokounmpo. The Wizards now should be focused primarily around building on whoever that number one overall pick is. Anthony Davis is in his mid-30s. You probably could move him for some positive value. They didn't give up much to get him. They took on a bunch of bad money. If you could get a good first-round pick for Anthony Davis, considering how much older he is and that player they're going to draft, I would highly recommend it.
Sam, who would want to roll the dice on Zion Williamson?
It's going to have to be a team that's flexible with the cap, has a great training staff, and has a good culture to kind of work him into. I'm not sure who the team is, but when you're talking about talent like this, somebody who can still pressure the rim at the level that Zion did, somebody absolutely would. The Pelicans have signaled that they want to keep Zion. I'm a little dubious. He doesn't really fit, especially defense.